Hello guys, welcome back to another election prediction video. This time we're doing the 2022 House elections, and now the Democrats have a lot of newfound momentum in the just House special elections. They won in Alaska and they won in an upstate New York district in New York. Pretty sure it's New York 19. So let's get right into this. First things first, Montana's, both their states going to be won by the Republicans by over 10%. Really don't see them as that competitive. In Wisconsin's third district used to be held by a Democrat. It's going to be a likely victory for Republicans here. It's a very Republican district still. So let's get right into it. I think Schweikart's still going to win. He's an incumbent Republican, and Biden only won this district by 1.5. So I think the Republicans are still going to be able to win it here. Tom O'Halleran, he's keeping this race competitive for Democrats, but I still think it's a very Republican district. Republicans will still win this by a lean margin of victory. Arizona 6, again, I think the Republicans will be able to win this district as well, just because the incumbent's not running for re-election. Josh Harder, it's going to be won by the Democrats by about a likely margin. Biden won this district by a sufficient amount. Pretty strong amount, might I say. California 13, it is an open state, so that's why I'm going to be putting it as lean Democratic. I would put it as likely if there was an incumbent there. David Valadao, it's a very much won Biden seat. And plus, with the Dobbs decision, it's really mobilizing a lot of voters in more toss-up / lean blue districts. I think the Republicans going to be defeated here. Mike Garcia, he's won a lot of close elections. It's Kirstie Smith, about 2 of them. I think the third time's a charm for her, though. Just with the Dobbs decision alone, I think she'll be able to pick up this seat against him. Michelle Steele, she's the one incumbent Republican I have the most faith in holding her district, even in a Biden won 6% district. I think she'll be able to win a very narrow victory. Katie Porter, she's a very vocal person in Congress. I do think the Democrats will be able to hold her district by a likely margin. Mike Levin, he's an incumbent Democrat. I think he's also going to be able to hold it by a likely margin. Colorado 8th District, the new district here, it's a Biden won district by 4.7%. And the Democrats have newfound momentum. I think they're going to be able to hold this seat by a very narrow margin. In Connecticut's 5th District, I really don't see it at all as that competitive. It's a very urban seat. I don't think the Republicans have a chance at winning it. Florida 7th, I agree with this. Sydney Axney, I do think she's going to be able to, she's probably going to lose in the Iowa. It's becoming a lot more of a red state. It's very rural. I think the Republicans will be able to do pretty well here. Illinois 13th, I agree with this rating. It is lean Democratic. Cherry Bustos, before I had it as Republicans winning it, but now I think the Democrats are going to be able to narrow victory here just with their newfound momentum. Indiana's 1st district, I also think it's going to be a lean Democratic. Sharice Davidson, Kansas, well, it's possible she wins, but I think the Republicans are going to pick up this district because it is Kansas. It's a very rural state, and I think the Republicans will be able to do well there. I agree with the rating in the Maryland's one swing seat. Jared Golden, I honestly think he's going to pull off a very narrow victory against the Republican opponent. He beat Bruce Poliquin before by a very narrow margin. I think he'll be able to beat him again because of how moderate he was in Congress. In Michigan's 3rd district, the Republicans really screwed up by electing John Gibbs over Peter Meijer. He's the one Republican I would have rated as a lean Republican in this district, but now that Peter Meijer is defeated and Hillary Schloden's going up against a very far-right candidate in John Gibbs, I think the Democrats are going to be able to win this seat by a lean Democratic margin. Elissa Slotkin, she's pretty much a moderate in Congress, really vocal as well. I think she'll be able to hold this district by a lean Democratic margin. Just because Gretchen Whitmer is up against Tudor Dixon, I think that'll mobilize a lot of Democrats to turn out here, and I see Elissa Slotkin winning against her Republican opponent. Daniel Kildee also thinks to be a lean Democratic district. While the open seat in Michigan's 10th, John James, he's finally going to get a victory after being election loser in 2018 and 2020. But it's going to be a very close race. Tudor Dixon is on the ballot, and she's a very unlikable Republican among independent voters in the state of Michigan. In Minnesota's 2nd district, I anticipate the Democrats be able to narrowly hold this district by a lean margin. In Butterfield's old district, he's not running, but it's a Biden won district by about 9%. I think the Democrats are probably going to be able to win this district by a likely margin. The open seat here, I think the Republicans are still going to win it by a lean margin just because they don't have any incumbents in the race, and it's only won by 1.8%. And honestly, I'll talk about what I think the generic ballot's going to be in the 2022 Senate House elections at the end of the video. Don Bacon, he's a very strong incumbent. I see him winning by a likely margin. He usually wards off these challengers by a pretty sufficient amount. In both the New Hampshire seats, I think they're going to be lean Democratic. I don't see them losing. I think they've been wary of not being too left-wing in Congress, and I think they're doing a good job at that. I think they'll be able to win off or hold these seats against the Republicans. In Malinowski's seat, I think, honestly, he has a real chance here. It's a good thing that they have the incumbent running for re-election here. If it wasn't the incumbent running here, the Republicans will be able to flip this, in my mind. The Republicans really lucked out that they have an incumbent here. I still think she'll be able to win, but it'll be one of the closest races in House elections, I would say. She'll only barely win. In Nevada's 3 swing districts here, I think the Democrats are going to run the table on them at this point, especially after the Dobbs decision. I think they'll have a lot of momentum here as we're seeing in the special elections. Lee Zeldin's seat, I think the Republicans will be able to hold it. It's a very neutral district, but I anticipate Republicans winning by about a lean margin. Susie's seat, I agree with that rating. It is lean Democratic. Maloney's seat is a Biden-won district by 10% and with a Dobbs decision, and the Democrats doing extremely well in the New York special elections. I think the Democrats are going to win here by a likely margin. New York 18th, agree with this rating. Pat Ryan won a very good victory in the special election, and I think he'll be able to get another win here. Mark Molinaro is running again, but he couldn't even win in a seat that was pretty much a neutral battleground in the special election. I honestly, and this seat's more Democratic than the seat he lost in that special election, which is why I'm putting this as a lean Democratic victory. John Katko's seat, also a lean Democratic victory. Republicans really screwed up by not having him run for re-election. He honestly could have won this seat, but it was very much of a screw-up among Republicans. Steve Chabot, he's a strong incumbent for the Republicans here. Even in a Biden-won district by 8%, I still think the Democrats are not going to be able to pick up the state against the incumbent. Marcy Kaptur, it's a Trump-won seat by 2.8%. Even though she's an incumbent, I don't see her winning against the Republican here, especially with Ohio trending to the right nowadays. In Ohio 13th district, I also agree that it's probably going to be a lean Republican district. Kurt Schrader's district in Oregon, I think the Democrats are going to be able to hold with their more progressive candidate they have in this race. Susan Wild, I think she's probably going to lose by a lean Republican margin. Well, Matthew Cartwright, he's going to get a victory here. He's a moderate Democrat in Congress, and the Democrats really lucked out in having him on the ballot. I think he's going to be able to fend off the Republican here. Conor Lamb's seat, they're also going to get a victory here. Rhode Island, I agree with their rating, is lean Democratic. Republicans lucked out in having a really well-known moderate running in this seat. Texas 15th, I also agree with this rating as lean Republican. It's a very Republican district. Henry Keeler, I would say it's about a lean Democratic district, while Texas 34th, it's going to be a likely victory for Democrats as well here. Elaine Loria, it's a more in the rural area of Virginia, even though it's by the coastline. I think the Democrats are going to have a narrow loss here, probably definitely under 1%, I would say. While Spanberger is going to be able to win, and I agree with the rating, the Washington swing seat, and Ron Kind will be able, the Republican will be able to pick up this seat by a likely margin. So let's look at the totals. So the Republicans are barely winning the House now, especially after that new momentum Democrats are harnessing. Republicans only win the House by 221 to 214 Democrats. Let me know what you think of this election prediction in the comments below. Let me know what you think of it, and let me know what your prediction for the House is, like number-wise. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.